Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for our Pillar Talk today. We're kicking off Measuring for Success Month here at Pqmd, and this is the first in a series of 4 events. And it also is part of a larger series of webinars that the Pqmd Community of Practice puts together to address major trends and best practices and cover provocative issues in global health. We're so excited to see you all here today. It's wonderful to see all your familiar faces, and welcome to the new ones as well. My name is Julie Marie Vanderberg, and I work as the Senior Director for Programs at Pqmd. And we are so excited today, along with Elizabeth Ashburn, our Executive Director, and the entire team at Pqmd, to share with you our interactive toolkit. For those of you who aren't familiar with Pqmd, we're a global alliance committed to advancing the role of donations worldwide. We have about 45 members currently, and it's made up of leading NGOs and healthcare companies that work in the global health field. Our members focus on critical medical products, supporting healthcare workers, and donating cash and services where most needed, and of course, strengthening healthcare systems. Our members leverage the power of their partnerships and expertise and resources for impact, all while adhering to the highest standards in quality donations. So let's get started. But before I hand it over to Mitch, Laura, and Alicia, I wanted to quickly go over a couple housekeeping rules. So please start by adding your name into the chat box. We'd love to know your organization too. Just go for it. We'd like you to use that kind of as your place where you can network during this session. Feel free to light it up with kind of responses to what you're seeing or questions. Of course, we'll get to those during the discussion. Or if you know of similar efforts, other resources, you can put your LinkedIn profile in there. Just utilize that space for us so we can see who's there and what else is going on in the donation space, in the M&E space, particularly around donations. So because of the large audience, we have gone ahead and muted everybody. But if you want to unmute during the discussion, we welcome you to do that. And we're also recording this session. And lastly, we'll be using Slido for a bit of structured interaction. Laura's going to stick up the Slido QR code here. For those of you who haven't used it yet, all you need to do is take a mobile device and flash your camera at the QR code. And it'll take you to our questions, which we'll run through when they're ready. If you're just on your computer, go ahead and go to open a window for slido.com and you can type in those numbers. We'll flash them again when it's time to do the polls, but just wanted to ensure that you could participate. We look forward to hearing from you. And now in this webinar, we're going to hear from members of Pqmd's K&I committee, our Knowledge and Innovation Committee, about our Measuring for Success Toolkit. So without further delay, I'll turn it over to the incredibly talented team and committed team. They'll each introduce themselves, and we're starting with Mitch Eiting, who's the chair of our K&I committee. Thank you, Mitch.
Thanks, Julie Marie. Good morning, everyone. Welcome from snowy Ohio. I don't know if everyone's got sunshine or decent weather, but we're making it through. Like Julie Marie said, I am the chair of the K&I Committee, Knowledge and Innovation. I work at Midmark Corporation, which we work in 3 areas of healthcare: medical, dental, and animal health. And I do all the philanthropic adventures for our company. So as we get going here, we're going to introduce you today to the Measuring for Success Toolkit that kind of started back in 2015, but I'm going to give you a few highlights of why we got to where we're at, and then I'll be turning it over to Laura Holland once I'm done with my comments, and then we'll get right into it. So the toolkit basically is an excellent resource for people wanting to work and improve and expand their medical products donations program. And it could be anywhere from pharmaceuticals to capital equipment to whatever you're trying to pull together from a stats perspective. And that also is something that the reason we started this back in 2015 is because donors are wanting to know where their dollars are going that they're donating to the organizations, normally on the NGO side and sometimes on the corporate side. But the primary focus of the toolkit is to boost organizational and interorganizational capacity in the products donation space. The Toolkit is an interactive website that allows you to, it's user-focused collection on traditional monitoring evaluation resources interpreted through medical products donations lens. Give you an idea, there on there you'll find processes, checklists, definitions, visuals, linked resources, examples, and much more. I know there's some white papers on there also from some of our members here at Pqmd. So while we get this thing started, you can throw this in the chat, or it might be on the poll area, but how familiar are you with our toolkit? Is it new to you? Have you seen it? Have you used it before? Or you utilize it all the time? So it'd be great to see where everyone's level is. So if you want to take some time, I have seen it but not used it. Okay, we're getting some. I'm just going to read these as we're talking here. We got 2 people. Okay, well, we'll let that go as we move along here. So as we design the tools to spark internal conversations and lay out the logical path for your M&E approach that makes most sense for your program and your organization's needs. So this started, like I mentioned earlier, in 2015, started through the University of Washington. Dr. Andy Stargachis, I always triple over his name, but he's awesome. When it came to, we went to him and said, hey, we want to put together a guideline of M&E and how it can pull stats together. So that's just the quick rundown of it. But when we started this, it was a 48-page document. And then we started, I'm going to say, leaning it down because you could get lost in it real easily. And that's how we got to where we are with the toolkit right now. So I'm kind of going to let it there. And I'm going to introduce Laura Holland. Laura, she's now been with Pqmd about a year and a half, roughly. And Laura, the floor is yours.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Mitch, for the intro. It's so exciting to see so many of you today. I love seeing the interaction in the chat and responding on Slido, which is my first time seeing that. I'm definitely going to borrow that. Maybe there's a free version I can steal. But so I am thrilled to be here today. I'm a social impact consultant whose background is in public health. And for the past, actually, it's been 3 years, Mitch, time flies. 3 years been working with Pqmd and on this dream opportunity really to help launch this toolkit. And I still love that, we went from something that didn't exist to something that now is, well, I shouldn't say didn't exist, but the online version didn't. And now we have it and it's grown and evolved. And we really do think of it as a dynamic, evolving platform. And so today we're going to jump into that. I have the pleasure of walking you through it. So please join me as we do so. Feel free to jump in on your own screen as well, although that might be tricky to sort of navigate back and forth for you. You can always go to measuringforsuccess.org. I love that we got that domain, and play with it yourself. I'm going to kind of, my goal today is to stay at a really high level and just sort of show you what this toolkit looks like and how you can engage with it. And certainly not to read all of the words or the diagrams that you'll see on the screen. That's for you later. And of course, please just know that we're always here to answer questions, talk about it with you, take your input and feedback on how we can make this better and more meaningful all along the way. And so when you first get to measuringforsuccess.org, you can kind of scroll down and you'll see that there is sort of a table of contents below that will eventually move to the left of your screen. As you'll see, and that will allow you to sort of jump around to the different sections as you go through. And so you can see the table of contents move to the left side. Now I'm starting in the what's in the toolkit section, which is probably a great place to start if you're new to this or you've seen it but haven't gone in yet, so now it's time to go in. This section really just gives a high-level overview of the 4 major sections of the toolkit, which are organized around monitoring and evaluation activities and phases, design, planning, methods, and reporting. And the content sort of sits under each of those buckets. And, you know, in addition to sort of some narrative about what's in the toolkit, you'll also see some main reasons that users might come to use the toolkit, which represent, I'm sure, only a few of the many reasons users might come to this site. And of course, you see our promise to continue to treat this as a growing and evolving document in a continuous feedback loop. That you can continue through the toolkit at any time by clicking at the bottom. That will take you right to the next section, or you can jump around on the left-hand side in the table of contents and go down to the bottom. I'll click here, and which will, like I said, take me to the very next consecutive section, which sort of provides some context for the scope of this toolkit, which of course is about, you know, measuring and evaluation or monitoring and evaluation. Sometimes people use the M interchangeably to mean different things. And you know, it's a central truth about this toolkit that and intention that while there are certainly broadly applicable concepts and approaches in here, the most important value add that we see of this toolkit is the specific topical lens of product donations that we apply to, you know, everything throughout this toolkit. So, you know, you can find plenty of M&E content out there on the web, but this is specific to product donations and really how it sits in the global health and sort of global development space. So this is the place to go for that. In addition to, you know, providing a general context of product donations, you'll also see this one of the newer tools, and I would say one of the like newly emerging foundational frameworks for this work that has certainly built upon, you know, several years of thinking about how we articulate the various players and actors and initiatives in the field of medical product donations. This pyramid seeks to sort of articulate the common impacts at the top here and the common pathways for creating that impact. And I'll show you when you click here, as it says, it takes you to the oh, sorry, for some reason that maybe that's, apologies. Instead of clicking here, I'll just go over to the what's new, because like I said, this is a brand new within the last month or so framework that we're sort of putting out. Again, this is definitely an evolving body of work for this group, and I think something that we all can see opportunities to build upon. But it does really seek to connect those dots between impacts and pathways. And in addition to, you know, this high level visual, which is always nice to see, you know, there are opportunities to click in and of course click to go deeper and actually see all of the sort of the details that sit underneath each of these domains, including what we mean by this impact domain, the types of outcomes that one can sort of expect to see and are common in the product donation space, and some features of how M&E sort of might come and be important when you're talking about this impact area. And so you can, and we also do that for the pathways as well. It's a little bit different, talking more about outputs rather than outcomes here. And we do see this as something that not only can we build on when we're talking about, you know, shared, you know, an aligned approach toward metrics in the space, but also as a communications tool to help illustrate the kind of collective efforts and impacts of the Pqmd kind of members. And I'll also say that we're currently piloting some worksheets that allow you to sort of, you know, interact with the pyramid in a way that brings your own efforts into view through this lens, and connects to, you know, and see how your work sort of connects to broader efforts. And this is another important feature of this toolkit, that there are these sort of embedded PDFs that will pop out for you, and you can then sort of do, you know, interact with them in a way. Some of them are PDFs, some of them are Word docs, and you can sort of either fill them out and or print them out and sort of adopt them and you know, use them for your own. On February 28th, there is the fourth sort of webinar in this series that's actually taking the form of a workshop, and that's a very real opportunity for us to pilot this worksheet. If anyone's interested in joining, we're really encouraging, especially those who are closest to the M&E strategy and work in your organization, to join that. So I I want to briefly point out one additional newer tool, one other newer tool, although it's almost been a year now, probably, since we really put this out there, but you know, which was, you know, to me, really illustrates the agility that this platform provides Pqmd to work with its members and sort of listen to, connect to, respond to the immediate needs and interests. And of course, as we know, you know, so many, all Pqmd members were busy sort of pulling together a COVID-19 response in 2020. And, you know, it became clear that like the value of a structured way to reflect internally on one's own responses and begin to assess and sort of wrap your arms around the results and describe your M&E approach was, and so that's exactly what this fillable tool sought to do. And, you know, and so we put this out there and as part of a collaborative effort of doing some sort of informal interviews with some members and sort of, you know, of course, I know I'm going fast through these tools and not expecting you to read all of them, but this is actually a fillable sort of tool that one can use and then sort of print out your results. There's also embedded in this tool, I just clicked out of it, but oh, here it is. There's guidance for sort of prompts and questions for thinking about some of the different ways to understand your impact when it comes to your COVID-19 response. As we all know, COVID-19, unfortunately, was not a quick experience and seems that it will be with us. And I'm sure a part of people's response efforts for hopefully not too long, but for some time. And so we are continuing to think about how we can make sort of minor updates that will continue to capture the interest for those who are continuing to support ongoing efforts in this space. As I go back, before I jump into the 4 major sections of the toolkit, as I mentioned, you'll see here starting with design, I just want to make a few points. First is that while they do sort of read consecutively in terms of the process of M&E, they, and to some extent, the concepts even build upon each other. We did design this toolkit to allow multiple points of entry so that you do not need to consume it in order. And we even have hyperlinks sort of embedded throughout the section that can show how things sort of link together. And we also want to say that we did try to write this from an important perspective, which is the user's perspective, capturing the challenges and questions. You know, as you see, even we wrote it from the perspective of, I want to do something. And so sort of offering solutions through the provision and connection to information, resources, and tools. And so each of the major sections, as I described, I'm not going to click through all of them, but we can look at the first one in design, which really gets into results frameworks, which is a tool in this space that can help you really describe in clear terms what it is exactly that your product donation efforts are aligned to and the desired impact and the chain of impact. And really, we see this as, you know, a key first step before you engage in monitoring and evaluation efforts. In addition to sort of, you know, just to show you how things are sort of set up in terms of interaction, you know, you can sort of click on these areas, and these are prompts to start to think about how you're sort of crystallizing and articulating your program, which also appear in a PDF that you can click out to. And in addition, this section really gets into results frameworks, and in particular logic models. Sorry, there's a continue button here, forgot. And in addition to describing some of the sort of approaches for looking at medical donations in your logic model, there are some fillable tools where you can start to like write your own logic model for your program, as well as, and I know I'm moving fast because I have about another minute or so, as well as helpful links to external sort of resources in the space that if you want to learn more and kind of go deeper into the logic model space. I think I'm going to skip to one of the last sections before I then hand it off to Alicia to talk about, as one of our case study contributors and a knowledge and innovation committee member who's contributed to this. She'll share about that. But I think I'll just sort of end with one more in the method space where we're talking about jumping into the section on indicators, which is an area that's really important to Pqmd to continue to develop. This is a section that sort of jumps right into SMART indicators, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, and how to develop strong indicators for your work. In addition to guidelines, there's also a downloadable tool that helps you, apply these principles in operationalizing your own indicators. And then the section does continue on. This is a good reflection of this toolkit in general to dive into common indicators used in the product donation space, including the results of some qualitative interviews that we conducted in 2019, where we started to get a sense of how members were, there's been plenty of work in the space to try to triangulate what members are doing and what people in the space are doing. And there's also like a deeper dive into one of PQMD members, AmeriCare's efforts to sort of, kind of really go and operationalize some key indicators, as well as an external landscape of the space that's relevant to this work. So handing it off to Alicia. I hope I'm okay on time. Thank you all for listening. Happy to dive in deeper with anyone who wants to. So thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia Anamale, a Director of Programs at the Max Foundation, headquartered in Seattle, Washington. The Max Foundation has been a longstanding member of PQMD, and I've been a part of PQMD's Knowledge and Innovation Committee, chaired by Mitch, since last year. So Laura, thank you for that overview of the Measuring for Success Toolkit. So to echo what Laura and Mitch said, the toolkit is a practical resource for individuals and organizations in the medical donations area to support their monitoring and evaluation efforts. And this year's update of the toolkit included 5 real-world case studies shared by NGO members, some of whom are here today. So these included MedShare, who highlighted their foundational experience in developing their organizational theory of change and the strategic shift that ensued with the decision to link program strategy to desired impact. AmeriCare's, who shared a thought-leading process to deepen impact metrics, which resulted in the development of their total reach for donated medicines metric. MAP International reflected on the need to find solutions to real barriers in capturing good data, and they shared valuable learnings on leveraging fewer effective targeted programmatic evaluations to boost that same program's overall effectiveness. The Measuring for Success Coalition of diverse stakeholders developed and shared aligned systems of measures and indicators for hygiene distribution kit programs, focusing on finding common language and co-creating solutions that work along the data pipeline. And finally, from the Max Foundation, we shared the development and implementation of our M&E framework and plan to assess the performance and impact of our patient access programs globally. So at the Max Foundation, like many organizations here, we don't have a dedicated M&E department. And so M&E has really been a function of our broader programs team. And so we as a team have had to do a lot of learning and knowledge sharing of M&E concepts and tools that can be quite complicated. So the PQMD Toolkit has been such a fantastic resource for refreshing on concepts like logic models and theory of change, and as well as for walking through the various steps of the M&E process in a really systematic way. I personally have found the case studies to be particularly valuable because, it's always helpful to see what other people are doing and perhaps what best practices are. And that's really why we at the Max Foundation chose to contribute our case study, because we believe that that peer-driven collaborative approach to the toolkit is so important for keeping the toolkit relevant and useful for a wide range of individuals and organizations, as well as for contributing to the wider body of knowledge on the impact of medical donations. Laura, if you could transition to the slide on the PQMD Toolkit development process, great. So our experience at PQMD is that organizations are indeed doing incredible work, yet still seek to improve on metrics for product donations. And we promise to keep building on that. So the toolkit, as Laura pointed out, is not a static document, but a living resource that will continue to develop. So the toolkit is maintained by PQMD's Knowledge and Innovation Committee. The K&I committee is composed of about 12 to 15 members from leading international NGOs and healthcare companies, and our work is focused mainly on researching issues significant to PQMD, such as the review and development of aligned frameworks and metrics to improve the effectiveness and impact of product donations in global health. And together we represent many of the stakeholders involved in product donations work. So we have program directors, technical M&E people, corporate relations, and partnership managers who review, edit, and update the toolkit on an annual cycle, with new editions coming online every October. Next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. And so let's quickly take a look at how the toolkit fits into the larger body of measuring for success work led by the committee. So it's currently our primary contribution to advancing M&E capacity across the sector. So in addition to developing the suite of tools, this graphic shows how PQMD works to advance the impact of medical product donations. So PQMD also hosts a community of practice, seeks the engagement of a network of professionals, and hosts events like this webinar and working sessions to help boost best practices. And as we see in the third level here, PQMD holds a unique vantage point for common barriers, concerns, achievements, and successes across programs that surface throughout our regular work. And at select times, PQMD is privileged to lead collaborative solutions driven by multi-stakeholder coalitions. So one project that is on the direct horizon is advancing the alignment of indicators. So PQMD's long-standing commitment to advancing metrics for medical product donations programs will continue into the future, and we invite you to join our efforts in any way you see fit. Thank you. I'll pass back to Julie Marie.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful overview, and we hope that you do take the time to jump in. We are always available for questions and always available too if you want to join us in our work that we do. The next slide, please, Laura. I just wanted to remind people that this is the first in this 4 kind of event series. Next, we're going to be hosting a learning exchange for members only. Stay with me though, because we're going into discussion. I just wanted to quickly highlight these. So you do have to register for them separately. So if you registered for this webinar, and I think there's the registration link has just been dropped into the chat, but we'll be going deeper into kind of that last level that Alicia mentioned in terms of aligned metrics for product donations on the 15th. And then if you liked what you saw when Laura flashed up the pyramid and would like to work through that in a practical sense for your own organization, please go ahead and register for the workshop. Space for that one is limited. However, if we get a lot of interest, we'll definitely put on a second session. So go ahead and register, or at least let us know, even if that date doesn't work for you. So I guess now we'd like to utilize a little bit of time to open up some interactive discussion or dialogue about the toolkit. We have just real quick, a couple prompts. Laura, will you put that? Yes, thank you. And then Jen, I think I'd like to go to poll 3, if you're fine with that. The first one is just asking our members of the audience, how many of you actually have your M&E framework, and I guess the options that we've selected here are kind of yes, we have one, no, we don't have one, or we're working on one. Let's see. Are you guys seeing that? Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Thanks, Jen. We just kind of wanted to get a lay of the land of kind of who's out there so that everybody else knows who they're talking to too. It looks like people so far in the poll, most people are working on one or in development, which of course makes sense within today's landscape. However, like Laura said too, the toolkit was really designed from a user-centric experience so that you can go into there no matter where you're at and hopefully improve whatever you're starting to build. Now let's go to the next slide real quick. I was curious after, if you do have that M&E framework or if it's in development, does it specifically address donations? Does it include donations? It's been our experience that it's definitely trickier to kind of attribute change towards donated products when they're nested inside a larger health development program. This is great. This is great. And then one of the, and you can use the chat too if you have questions that you want to ask. We'll get back to them in just a minute. The next thing we wanted to look at was sort of a word cloud. So if you're thinking about the current barriers, and we're very aware that metrics landscape is shifting and changing quite a bit right now, which is very exciting and filled with opportunity to do things better. But so what do you see as kind of current barriers to getting M&E information right now? Measuring impact, stay capacity, partner tracking, yep. Unclear purpose of data, stakeholder buy-in. These all look really good. Did anybody want to talk about this at this point? Unmute yourself, and at any one of these polls, we can start having a discussion. We really wanted to go where the audience wanted to go here. These are resonating with us, with me and the committee for sure. And this is helpful too, as PQMDs in our kind of larger body of work, looking at some of the aligned metrics projects that we're working on for the future. It's very helpful to see practitioners as yourself validating a lot of the things that, you know, our committee is finding. Jen, I wonder if we could go to word cloud 4. So it's jumping ahead a little bit. And it's a question to the audience, wondering how do you, when we think about developing aligned metrics specifically for product donation, what comes to mind for you? Is it possible, not possible, already happening? You know, whatever you're thinking. And Laura, Alicia, and Mitch, you can feel free to contribute at any point to the discussion. But one of the intriguing things that we found, and we've been working on with that pyramid, is over the past, say, year and a bit, we have been validating the different avenues or pathways to product donation programs with the PQMD members. So those kind of green boxes along the bottom, or maybe they're blue, the boxes along the bottom that talk about the different ways through which, in the different activities people participate in, how they can lead to similar outputs. Funder requirements, recipients treated, established criteria, impact on people's lives, working group. Does anybody want to talk about what you're putting in here? Are there aligned metrics currently for healthcare workers that are trained? Is that something that I've seen that come up twice now? Is that an area where this is also coming to light, coming to bear? We also want any of the metrics that we're working on. You know, I think that the value of PQMD is to be able to kind of obviously work with a kind of cross sector group, both in corporates and in NGOs. And also we talk a lot about expanding kind of that data, expanding the voice across that data pipeline to make sure that the stakeholder voices are indeed informed, informing the conversation. Kim, I'm seeing your comment in the chat. Did you want to unmute? Can you unmute? Do you want to talk to this? Because I think there's a truth.
I always talk.
Thank you. There's a truth to the fact that this can't be prescriptive. It has to be harmonized in a guiding, and you bring up a perfect example there. Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, the way we're seeing number of recipients benefiting from the medicines is defined daily dose or whatever, and we're fine with that. So that's kind of formulaic. It's a little bit easier to manage. When we look at our sutures, for example, it's potentially not, our medical equipment is potentially not as formulaic. And in some cases, that's not really defined out there. We tend to see more responses on the sutures, for example, based on work that's actually being done. So patient reporting, but that's not always something you can get. When you're looking at healthcare providers trained, I don't think you can have a formula where you're just gonna have to track what was done, which is why we don't get the numbers that we need, because it's hard to track. It's hard to have that information when you're working in third world contexts. It's easier when you're working with partners like Mercy Ships or Operation Smile, where it's a little bit more hands-on, centralized management. But when you're looking at AmeriCares, who's supporting clinics all over the world, it's harder for them to get the detail. Just a thought.
I think it's a great point, Kim, and to tap onto, we've talked a lot today about the diversity of actors in the space and where you sit in the, as Julie Marie just called it, pipeline of data, and how close, if you're a donor versus you're an on the ground implementer or anything in between, what you have direct, what's in your direct sphere of control versus your sphere of influence, and how it sort of circles out from there, and is related to not only how you think about your own impact, but also related to what data you have readily available and what data it makes sense for you to have or request readily. And so like closing those gaps along that pipeline seems like a noble task, but what that looks like is would require the engagement of everyone, like Julie Marie said, along that pipeline and working together on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're really excited to kind of dive into this work, because although people, and just so everybody knows too, AmeriCares, that study that the total reach formula that Kim just mentioned is actually in the toolkit as a case study, and was developed in collaboration, right, between a number of, between Johnson & Johnson and AmeriCares, but then put out to be able to be used by other groups as well. And Lee, who kind of headed it up technically from the AmeriCares perspective, is also on the K&I committee. So I feel like that this is a really great place if you're doing any kind of collaborative work or trying to deepen or diversify, as I like to say, our metrics, to try to see maybe if there's an impact at a different level, potentially not at a beneficiary level. Maybe we start looking at the healthcare facility levels, or in provider levels of morale. There's a lot of new thinking that is kind of starting to not only I think people have been doing it by themselves for a long time, but the coming together to talk about these new ideas and see what's working and what's could be improved upon is really an exciting opportunity. Jen, would you flash up that one more word cloud? I'd like to see what this group, obviously some of you have not seen the toolkit before, but just after today's walkthrough, or kind of if you could take a minute and reflect on what you're looking to connect with peers on, we would love to have kind of a word cloud smattering of ideas of what you might be looking for in the toolkit, or what you might be looking for from sort of a forum like this. This is great. Yeah. And in terms of a workshop, Pqmd is going to be standing up a module. I think we can start kind of in different areas. We've been going back and forth about how to best also address that need for a workshop, or, that kind of more close learning, because this is very much a self-guided workshop, a self-guided website where you can go on and kind of it's self-paced. We have examples of members. You're going to hear from Tina Greer from IHP on the 15th, and they use the toolkit to kind of walk through and stand up their M&E framework, of course, with technical help and assistance. They're able to, I don't know if anybody from IHP is on right now. If you are, you're welcome to chime in. So I think looking at we got a real sense when we work with our members through where they're at in the toolkit, that there is a need for some of these more workshopped ideas. This is great. Does anybody want to talk about this? Like what in particular, prompted you to say any of these? And so in addition, I see the examples too, or like trying to connect with peers, just might be worthy to note our community of practice is an area where people can connect with each other, with their peers about many different areas, but we do have a specific community practice for the Knowledge and Innovation Committee too. So we can, if you are interested, just go ahead and reach out to me. It's a private group, and we can make sure that the group is connected there.
I will just say too, seeing that examples, real life examples from members, I hearken back to, I think it was late 2019, and that in-person meeting before the world started to, shut down. That was one of the most resounding things I remember from a little session that we did on, getting as many real life examples of how organizations are facing this and their actual tools. And, I think it took the, we didn't get to that in the first year, but in this past year, we really focused on that. And that's why we've got 5. I definitely encourage those who wrote that to check out the case studies. They're not only like great narratives on how people worked through things, but there are absolutely, real tangible documents in there that these organizations have so generously shared. So do check those out.
And documents, and also forms that you can use. I see other members of the committee are coming on and lighting up. If you wanted to just kind of at least raise your hand, if you want to say anything, we'd welcome that as well. Okay, well, Mitch, why don't you close this out? And thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us. Although, it's not an area you can kind of just see and react to right away. So take the time to look at it, and definitely reach out to any of us on the K&I committee, or anybody at PQMD will put you in the right in touch with the right people.
Julie
And
Marie,
I
I
think
think
a quick-
Andy has his hand up.
Just a quick pitch.
Sorry, Andy.
This toolkit is a remarkable resource, and I think of it as a living document that has the particular attention of the K&I committee under Mitch's leadership, a very active committee, and but it also is going to benefit greatly from the engagement of PQMD members. And so I just want to give everybody credit who's been part of bringing it to this point. And I see it having, long-lasting application and utility. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy. We greatly appreciate that. One thing I just want to add was on the last one of what you are looking for in the toolkit. That is giving us the guidance to where we need to take this toolkit. I was amazed on how many ideas were put up there and things you guys want to see and want to utilize. So that just gives us our path for the next year or so. So thank you guys so much. I want to thank Julie Marie, Laura, Alicia for all helping out with this pillar talk today. And one more time, if anyone's interested in getting being part of the K&I committee, please contact Julie Marie at pqmd.org. And have an awesome day. And we just appreciate you guys being part of the conversation today. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Great job.